afternoon from Riga. We are back with round 8 of Riga Technical University Open 2024. The one but last round, you could even say in some ways one of the most decisive ones as well, because the one you lose today, and one game is usually not enough to get back in the race for anything whatsoever. If it's for the norms, if it's for the top places, if it's for the win in the tournament, no matter what, you cannot afford to lose in round 8 for that. So it's very, very tense situation, as you don't know exactly what's the best result for you, also for the remaining of the pairings and so on. So we'll see how the players manage to cope with this tense situation in the event. And with you, once again, is Women International Master Anna Kantane.
Yes, welcome everyone. Good afternoon. And of course, with me is in the studio Grandmaster Kantāns. Very exciting round once again. I think this whole tournament for me, every single year commentating here, it's just a lot of fun because you can never know what to expect. We actually have quite an unusual situation that the top seed at the moment is on the first place as well. So we can take a look at the standings just to show you what is the situation now after round 7. Nicolas Teodoro, you see just by the name, the first number is the starting number, and the one on the very left is the current place. So yeah, Nicolas is the first seed of the tournament, and he is managing. It's usually such a hard situation to be the best one, because in every single game you're from the top. In every single game you have to prove that, well, your rating and your strength, they do match. So for now he is doing incredibly well. But as you see, he is sharing first place with 2 other players, Jacob Payekan and V. Ratanvel. So he's actually playing with the Indian player at the moment. So it's very interesting because those players rated 36th and 20th in the tournament, and this is what I meant, that it's always so fun here, so interesting, because yeah, those players, even though they are much lower rated and at the beginning they are further in the starting list, they are showing that they are very good chess players as well. And actually, when I look at the standings, one thing that catches my eye also is that on the 11th spot we have someone with a starting rank 123. So you see, rated 2185 from India, Niranjan Navalgund is doing incredibly well, and yeah, this is the fun part about this tournament.
Yeah, certainly. The rating doesn't win a tournament. Everybody can play very, very strong chess here. Everybody is fighting. Everybody is hungry for the wins, and every point you just have to earn, no matter who is your opponent. And also, I would like to point out that at this point, an important factor to consider is also the tie breaks. So this column that we see under TB1, this is the first tie break that is used to determine standings in case players have the same number of points. And while it can change still slightly, but the difference when it goes to 4 or 5 points, that one is that usually doesn't change in the span of 2 rounds. So realistically, when we speak about fighting for the first place, for the win in the tournament, we have to look at those who are in the leader group sharing, and then those among the best tiebreaks in the group, trailing them with 5.5 points. And the Kasper Puron, if he does manage to win today, having the second best tiebreak in an event, he is also in a very, very great spot to actually be fighting for the win in the whole event.
Yeah, and we see this group with 5.5 points is a really big one. So from the place number 4 all the way to 17th location, we have players with 5.5 points, and then group with 5 points is also very long. And then there we also have the best female players. So I don't know if we can scroll just to show you. there we have Agrabel Vantika. She's currently the top female player, and she's also the highest rated one. So it's quite interesting that now we have top seed of the tournament is on the first spot, and also the highest rated female player is for now the first among the ladies. But of course, it's still 2 more rounds, and as Tom's mentioned, those rounds will decide everything. We will be focusing on the top boards, but maybe something will catch your eye, dear viewers. So you can let us know also. I think on Twitch there is a chat on which you can let us know. And yeah, maybe on that we should jump into the games, because
we could see the pairings first of the round.
True. That is
yeah,
true.
So let's see the pairings exactly. Who is meeting who today? And on board 1 we have already, as mentioned, Teodoro Nicolas against Ratanvel. So that is very, very decisive game, because Teodoro with white pieces certainly is hungry for a win, and if he does manage to win this game, it does put him in fantastic spot before the last round, since another person with 6 points playing with black pieces on board 2 against strong Grandmaster Laurentius Thomas, it's gonna be a bigger challenge to win a game there, and maybe it is even more about defending the game with black pieces against such a tough pairing for Payek and Jacob. But anything can happen, as this tournament has shown. Anything can happen at any moment. And yeah, so we'll be also following most of the games which are happening in the group with 5.5 points. But if something more interesting we notice on the lower boards, we'll jump there ourselves, or as Anna already mentioned, you can let us know and we will try to take a look.
Yeah, and we see that one game is already over, so Ki-chan against Singh Sahib, they already agreed for a draw, and we were mentioning that Ki-chan yesterday, he had still chances, at least theoretical ones, for the Grandmaster norm, but he needed to play against the Grandmasters, and he needed to score against them, but today he got paired against FIDE Master, so that meant the chances are not there, and yeah, I guess just securing a good result in the tournament is enough. There are a lot of prizes here in the tournament. It's not only about high prizes, but in this festival in Riga, there are just a lot of prizes. Always many players want get prizes. So yeah, even though they will not be maybe around the top, they are still fighting for some nice financial prizes here. So yeah, let's jump to the games. The players are already playing. The game started some time ago. So the action is live, and yeah, let's take a look at board number 1. Crucial game of the round for sure.
Yeah, we see the players playing on the top board. Both are very focused, and also the position. So the first thing that immediately catches the eye before we even start speaking about the chess part of the game is the time.
The clock, look at the clock.
So the player with white pieces has already 50 minutes more. This is insane time advantage, truly insane. And
Wow.
But it's also understandable, since even though probably if you just look at the position, there is nothing major happening. It's nothing super dangerous. It's just very unpleasant position to be playing due to the fact that there is one rather ugly pawn for black pieces right now on c6, the pawn which is backwards, and the bishop is just stuck on defending it. So you just have to try to survive it, and this is the worst feeling when you don't have a clear game and your opponent is the top seed in the tournament.
Yeah, this is unpleasant. Also, the bishop on d7 is on the same color, like the pawn on c6, the pawn on d5, so this is most likely not a great bishop. White seems to be having a very comfortable game after the opening. Maybe we can quickly see how it developed without too much theory involved, but just to see how it all happened. Maybe we can also figure out, looking at the clock, about the prep. How deep did the prep go for Teodoro? And when did it finish for red and well? Usually the clock is a pretty good indicator. When you see a first longer thought on the clock, that probably means that this is the moment when player wasn't already in the book, wasn't clear for them what to play anymore.
So this is all very, very known theory, very mainstream stuff. One of the probably the main lines in this setup. So Castle, he did spend some minutes on it already, so maybe he was thinking between this and some sidelines. But okay, he went, White is blitzing, was up already to 1 hour 35 at this point. Again, few minutes on the Rook D8 move. And now we see the first moment of thoughts. So White didn't do anything special at all, simply played out the main line and developed pieces. So that's it. Now Castle is the most logical move, and all of a sudden Black falls asleep. And things are ready for 12 minutes on the move retreating with the bishop, which should be a good move, since we do not want to give up this bishop and we don't want to deal with the knight having to protect it at all times. So bishop f8 seems very, very natural move. Now knight e7, removing the knight from the rather uncomfortable square on c6 and preparing just to play c6 on his own. And now already anticipating next black's moves, we see b4 and just being ready for c6 already with b5. That's a very, very nice strategy, just to get into your opponent's head, to be one step ahead of him. Just, okay, I know you're gonna do this, so I'm gonna be already ready for that.
Yeah, this seems to be a really nice move, and it was a prep as well. We see 1 hour 36. That is a lot of time. Everything is going super fast for Teodoru still here. So that was all a prep. You just create a weakness on c6. This pawn that Tom's already mentioned, this ugly pawn, that was all part of the plan. Just make it weak, make it unpleasant for the opponent to deal with. And you see, just White has this one semi-open file, the C file, leading right to this pawn, and this is why this pawn is bad, because White has an easy access. So in chess, usually when there is a weakness, something can look ugly, let's say, but it's not going to be a weakness if it's not easily attacked. But here it can be attacked because White has the file leading right to it. And if we compare it even with the semi-open file that Black has, the E file, that's the open file. Tom's. Tom's is also still learning. So Black has the semi-open file on the E. That's where Black doesn't have a pawn, but White has a pawn there, right? And if you just compare it, that White's pawn on E3 is just well guarded. It has a friend on f2 to defend it. So yeah, it's a totally different story. And yeah, then we have a B file that is open for both sides. So for now, Black is controlling it, and that may be one good thing in this position that is going for Black. Is it a problem that Rook can come somewhere to b2? It shouldn't really be, but at least Black has something.
Yeah, that is the only positive thing I would say in the Black's position right now. The B file, it's a lot of squares that we are controlling, but unfortunately there is also the big drawback that now Rook from c5, in case of some moves like Rook b2, very likely would just move to a5, attacking the a7 pawn. So it's another weakness in the Black's position now, especially with Rook so active, and we might just need to retreat backwards since we don't have any other comfortable way how to defend this pawn. So yeah, this is a perfect opening scenario for White here. Like everything that you want in these structures, and also we got rid of the bishop from f8. So this is like before that for the Black, there was one plus. There we had a pair of bishops and some control over the dark squares. So there could be potentially some attack on the king side or something, or just simply not letting the pieces get too active. And after we take on c5, there is no two bishop advantage. There's a bad bishop against a good bishop. So this bishop is bad because it's on the same color as the pawns, and this is a good one since it has a lot of space where to roam around the board. And probably White's knight is also better than Black's knight. I guess they both are kind of neutralizing each other at this point, since White would like to go to e5 and Black is blocking it. Black would like to go to h4, White is blocking it, so they are just compensating for it. But And the rooks. The rooks have a lot of nice ideas here for white. So how do you evaluate the chance to defend this with the black pieces here, Anna?
If the time clock was different, then I don't think I would be so how to say. Well, I simply think in this situation, on the board and on the clock, the chances for white are just huge to win the game. I am just expecting him to win it rather easily, to be honest, because 25 minutes on the clock, I don't think it's just enough. I mean, it's too big difference. It's almost 1 hour already on the clock. I'm wondering if the time was, more or less equal, and it also indicates mentally how you feel about the position, that you aren't simply certain how to deal with it. So yeah, if the clock was equal and we saw that Rattenvel feels more or less fine in this position, I don't think it's a winning situation for white objectively with like solid play. But still it's more comfortable. But here, honestly, taking everything under consideration, I think it's gonna be a win for white.
Yeah, I would also bet on white winning this game, for sure. But
yeah, rook b2 is on the board. Black is trying to put some pressure on the e2 bishop. So for example, sometimes white could have been thinking about some queen a4 moves to attack the a7 pawn, bring the queen to the game. But now the bishop is attacked, so white has to deal with it somehow. Maybe bishop d3 simply is not bad of a move, putting some pressure on the knight. Maybe white even at some point wants to take this knight. Probably don't want to rush with it too much, but it can be an option just to take it and then keep knight against the bishop and knight e5 ideas. So maybe that move, especially that then we control the b1 square, so maybe if we sometimes were thinking about exchanging the rook on b1, bishop is also helping us with defending that square. What do you think? Or you remove rook a5 just to put the pressure on the a7 pawn.
Bishop d3 makes a lot of sense positionally. I'm just a little bit worried if it doesn't open some tactical possibilities for black with knight h4 right now.
Oh, and
using
it does.
the fact that the queen and the rook are both staring down on f2 pawn. So we are not able to right now take on h4 with the knights, because simply queen f2 check would come, and then in the next move they take back the knight.
Ah, this is nice. Okay, so there could be issue with the f2 pawn. So that means if bishop moves, knight on f3 becomes pinned, because pawn on f2 is directly pressured, so knight h4 is there. Okay, so that is not possible. What about your rook a5 move?
Yeah, I'm wondering about this move.
Engine doesn't like it. Look, so there are some active ideas for black here. What could be the issue?
Maybe we just go for some active game with bishop g4, and if we take the pawn on a7, then perhaps maybe knight h4 immediately. Using
maybe
this
capture. Maybe first capture and then knight h4.
Ooh, or look at that. Can we just take rook takes e2? Queen takes e2, and now knight h4. Use the pin and completely demolish white's king's safety.
Nice. Okay, there are some cool ideas here from black actually. So we didn't see that before. Maybe we overestimated the position for white, although still this time seems to be so big for Nicolas, and since it most likely was a prep till like 2-3 moves ago, he could simply still know those ideas, and he could be aware that they are there, and maybe he also even checked in some way how to solve them. What about some move like knight e1? It looks pretty passive, but if we put our knight on d3, then we ask this rook from b2 to kindly get out of there, and we also defend on f2, so maybe knight can come to e1, and for the time being it looks very passive, but well, we don't want to stay there, we want to go to d3.
I of course want to go immediately active. Use the same idea over again, attacking on f2.
Then maybe white has to do something like f3.
Yeah, but now we have a weakness. We have a very, very clear weakness that could be tried.
And that's what we talked about before, that on the e file, black didn't have the target, but now the target is there because f2 pawn is no longer helping the e3 pawn. Oh wow, those are some fun ideas.
So yes, probably white has to play a little bit more solid. Maybe simply rook c2, just to completely kill off all the ideas against the f2 pawn, and the pressure against the c6 pawn, against the a6 pawn, a7 pawn is gonna still be there. So just exchanging the most active piece that opponent has here, and in case something like rook b8, then we are ready for rook c1 and just playing it very, very casually.
What about... And if bishop f5? Assuming there are no big issues, yeah?
Oh, we have a pawn on c6. Right, we can just grab the pawn. So the bishop f5 would be...
Would be a blunder.
Would be a blunder, yeah. Of course, black right now can enter some funny lines like this, but they are just gonna favor white here because white is just simplifying to a winning endgame. Pawn has been won, and yeah, so the fact that a lot of pieces got exchanged won't be really too helpful here. Okay, so some ideas there are still for black. White has to be somewhat careful, but judging from the situation on the clock, Theodoro here should solve all those issues.
Yeah, still probably. I agree, but yeah, there are some quite exciting ideas for black. So rook b2 coming to the second rank, it felt like just a usual move at first. I was considering it, but I actually was more focusing on, okay, we have some pressure on the a2 pawn and so on, just activity for the rook, but actually the biggest issue is connected to the fact that rook from b2 puts pressure all the way on the king side as well. Some issues with the f2 pawn could be there. With the f3, even this rook e2 sometimes could come and capture the bishop with cool attacking ideas. So let's see how it's going to be solved by Theodoro. I guess we will come back to this game later and we could take a look at board number 2.
Yeah, let's take a look at board number 2, where we have the third leader playing. And the position there is rather advanced. A lot of things have been exchanged.
Yeah, so here we have Jacob Payeken, who has been playing incredibly in this tournament. His rating compared to everyone else in the top is, you could say, low. It's 24-16, but his performance here is 26-66. That is just incredible. He only made 2 draws, and he is fighting for a GM norm here. The problem is that he needs to have a GM opponent tomorrow to keep his chances of the GM norm, and of course he still has to keep his performance over 26. But curious actually, what is he focusing on more, or at this point he just has to focus on winning his games. You were in similar situations actually also here in this tournament, that you were fighting for the top places, but you were still fighting for your GM norms when you were not a Grandmaster yet. How do you think, what is more on his mind, and what puts some pressure on him more? The fact that he can win the tournament, the fact that he's fighting for the GM norm, or it's just everything at once?
I think at least for me, it was the GM norm. Was the main thing on my mind, and actually, yeah, there was a situation exactly in round 8 when I was fighting for my GM norm here in Riga. I don't know how many years ago.
You were fighting with, and you were playing with Daniel Friedman. Was that the game? I think.
Maybe yes, it could be that. But maybe it was some other matchup as well, but it was with somebody way higher rated than me, for sure. And my main focus was, okay, I gotta survive it, because that gives me good chances for the GM norm. I didn't care if I'm second in the tournament, first in the tournament at that point, or somewhere lower. But then during the game my position was getting better and better and better. And then I started to, because first when you start a game against a strong Grandmaster with black pieces, very often you don't even think about winning. You just think about how to get out of this game. And and then the position was getting better and better and better, and then when you realize that you're actually having a winning position, this is when the problem started for me, because I just
You started thinking about the win, yeah?
exactly, I started to think about the win, and I had even the thought in my head, because that was the in that year specifically, I don't remember with who I played, but if I won this game, I knew that I'm playing in the last round against Arthur Snakeshans, who had and he would be, for him, the draw would secure the first place, and so for me the draw in the last round in this scenario would secure a GM norm. So it would be that there was this extra pressure in my head, because I had calculated everything, because there was no other pairing possible, since we would be the only two people, first, second place, and so that probably stopped me from actually winning that game and also getting a GM norm in that event.
And then you ended up losing the game in round 8, so everything collapsed. I think it was Daniel Friedman, if I remember correctly. You had like a lot of pawns with black pieces. I was following it as well. I was maybe equally stressed for this game. So yeah, it happened. So okay, so for Toms it was GM norm. Yeah, GM norm can be such a big deal. In general, any norm, I think. When you are fighting for the title, because title stays with you. If you manage to get the title, it's gonna stay with you, and it gives you quite a bit of perks as well. Winning the tournament is great, but then you know, life keeps going on. But if you get the title, you're just getting it, and you will have it for the next tournaments. So yeah, very interesting, very interesting. How it's affecting also Jacob, because he has been playing tremendously well here, but he must also have some nerves and feeling some pressure connected with it.
Yeah, but for him it might be, certainly it is there, but it shouldn't be that big considering his rating still. He is rather far from the rating of 2500, which would mean that GM norm is not necessarily already a GM title for him, so he would still need to perform on this level for quite a lot of events before he would bring the rating up. So maybe that eases the situation a little bit, but because in my case, first was the rating, and then I was only fighting for the norms.
Yeah, that could be, that's true. So let's see what the position is. So Thomas Laurusha is playing with white pieces. He just sat by the board, and we have some endgame already. Seems to be very active for black.
They actually went on an endgame very early on in the game. We can just show very quickly the opening. So it was here after bishop c4 on the castle a6. White simply decided to take on c5 and go for a long-term strategical endgame advantage. So that was visibly the strategy of Thomas Laurusha's here, and we can see that Jacob was not surprised by that in any way. An instant bishop takes c5, and very, very confidently, if you look at his time, all this was his preparation. He also was up to 1 hour 35 still in this moment. Also a5 was instantly played, and in these kind of endgame positions, this is the key. Like, if you had to start playing after queen exchange on your own entirely, it can be rather tricky to find the best squares for the pieces, to understand all the plans from the opponent, what is his long-term idea. But if you have prepared where to put all your pieces, then it becomes much more easy. And as you can see still, all his pieces are developed, and he was ready. He was ready just for knowing where each and every one of them goes.
Wow, that's so impressive. 1 hour 35 on the clock. That is all his prep.
And now this was the first moment we spent any time at all. And also that was not a lot of time spent, and now rook b4. So I guess this is for the moment when he's already playing on his own for sure. And wow, knight a3, just blocking the advancement of a pawn, looking to exchange this bishop, the passive bishop from e2 to active bishop on a6, and I guess searching for a long-term advantage thanks to the bishop against the knight.
Yeah, but for now the bishop is on c1, extremely passive. So that is also the case in this final position that we have currently on the board, now after f6.
So all the last moves by white were rook d2, rook c2, rook b1 are aimed at playing bishop d2 somewhere, so I guess we could expect bishop d2 to be played, and let's see if there's any problem with this move.
Yes, so the idea was that the b2 pawn was hanging, and bishop couldn't move, bishop had to guard it, but now both rooks from white defended, so black probably after this move has to simply retreat to b7, unless...
Yeah, this b6 or b7, I have no idea which is the better one. And then bishop c3 could come, so since the knight is blocking any possibility to attack this bishop, also the pawn on f3, so...
And probably this is why we have seen f6, so now black is ready to play e5, maybe, just to put the pawn chain... It's a very common thing, playing against the bishop on a long diagonal, that you put the pawn chain against it, so you're saying now you're staring right into this super solid wall of pawns and you have nothing to do here. So maybe this is something that could be planned by black. Maybe white could try to push the g pawn as well, try to play g4, h4, get some activity on the king side, try to undermine those pawns, but it's probably quite a long plan. Black also has something like knight b6, knight d5 that he could try. Yeah, all in all, I think still I like black. Black's position is super solid, feels very nice, and this knight on a3 will struggle to join the game at all.
Yeah, the moment on how the position is standing, I think black is doing very, very well. Yet you have to be careful, since c pawn can become potentially some target, some weakness, and as well we have those knights on the d file. So I mean, I would expect after in this kind of case, after e5, for example, rook d1, I think, or rook b or rook d2 as the main moves, just to ask some questions, especially this knight on d6. What do you do? Since if you decide to go with the knight somewhere else to the other side, I'll be very happy to bring a knight back to c4, or if you exchange the knight from d6 to a3 and play something on knight b5, at least that is also going to be helpful, since knight on a3 is obviously not ideally placed, and knight on d6 is very, very active in the center of the board. So before maybe advancing with the g4, h4, we will ask those questions, and then we'll go on with this plan, because yeah, the g4, h4 plan, I think that's a very, very good one. Every square, every extra square we get on the board that we control with the pawns is a small step towards actually getting some sort of an advantage there.
Interesting. I did like black. I think I still like black. I'm not sure. But from what you're saying, you would choose to play with white pieces in this position?
Yeah, I would take white here if we don't have any problems with the bishop on c3. This is my main concern. If black does get to the bishop somehow, if there's some way to be really getting to it, then I'm not sure that I prefer white exactly. But if the bishop is comfortably guarding the b2 pawn and I can activate my rooks on the d file while the opponent is just staring down on a very well defended pawn, then I take white in this position. So
maybe knight b6, yeah. So now rook d1 doesn't do anything because knight d5 can jump there, and pawn is on e6, still defending the d5 square. So maybe knight b6. But I am curious. We could make a... so like you're choosing white, I'm choosing black. Let's see how the game is going to finish. Who is right here? Yeah, e4, but e4 is also quite a big decision, right, from white side.
Yeah, it weakens a lot of squares, and of course it commits us to this pawn structure. And we could also be facing knight c4 here, and this is...
So that is a bit
tricky.
Weird, because we are defending this silly knight from a3. White can just take, but what did you get? Pressure on the b2 pawn. So now white wanted to move rook away from the b2 pawn, but now it's not possible since it's hanging, and also knight a3 is actually a threat. So if white does something else, like king d3 or h4, then knight a3, it's a fork, and pawn can capture the knight, but the price is quite big because white would be losing a rook on b1. So
Yeah.
that's just lost position for white.
Yeah, so this is tricky. So this is actually very, very tricky, and maybe this is something that Tamosh also right now noticed, and he's not sure how to get the rook out from b1. So maybe in this position there is some other alternative how to get out with those pieces before knight b6 comes. No, it doesn't seem like it, because we have to defend the b2 pawn in some sort of a way. Okay, so yeah, I think that this is the most annoying idea right now in this position from the white perspective, just on how to finish the development.
That's interesting. That is really interesting because it's sometimes you just don't think about such a move. It seems black wants to keep knight on a3 forever. It's the worst piece. And with exchanges, sometimes the key is not what is on the board now. So we feel like knight on a3 is stupid, it's very passive, it's out of the game, we never want to exchange it. But actually the most important thing is what's gonna stay on the board after the exchange. So for black it might be beneficial to get rid of this knight, because then they have their strong knight on c4 and a huge pressure on this b2 pawn, which is obviously a weakness, and quite a lot of tricks, and simply limit options for the opponent, for other pieces of the opponent, because knight on a3 is only one knight, but if we can control, for example, or limit options of the rooks, well, it might be a bigger gain.
Actually, returning to this position, I think it's also worth to point out that, of course, white is not in trouble, and we can play some move like rook d1 as well here, and this is, of course, kind of safe for white, but it's never gonna be anything more than just an equality in all these kind of exchanges.
King d1 was played though by Tomasz Lauruszas, and Jacob seemed to be quite surprised. He was looking a little bit at his opponent. He's still taking a look. He was looking on the board, and usually we see he seems to be like really shocked, not understanding this move. But usually when opponent plays a move, you write down the move on your score sheet immediately, and then you are, thinking about what to do. But what he did, he was staring at his opponent at the board, and only after a while he wrote down the move. Is there something wrong with the king d2?
No, I think it's more about the idea. Maybe he was not entirely sure what is wrong with bishop c3. Maybe he had not thought about this idea yet. I mean, it doesn't mean that he wouldn't have played it when it came, but maybe he was not really aware of it, so he thought that it's just the most natural to put bishop on c3, and
he thought, okay, bishop d2 is obvious move. First, he was probably surprised. What is wrong with my opponent? Why is he thinking? And then he is shocked to actually see a different move on the board. King d1, not a first choice for sure. And we see Jacob is a bit thrown off here. And what does it mean for black in this position? Because obviously that since bishop d2, bishop c3 develops this super passive bishop from c1, now white doesn't do it, so black kind of gets tempo, or at least some time. Can he do something?
yeah, that is, I mean, we can do some moves like h5 or something. I think they're very nice while our rook is on the fourth rank, controlling g4, h4 moves, or just getting some space with move like h5. I mean, this would be one of my thoughts if there isn't something clever with the knights. Of course, we can try to do something clever with knights, like try to get active with knight e5, but of course it is a bit risky to give up the pawn here. Perhaps the activity is worth it. Who knows? But
So yeah, this is the position. What could be the candidates? So h5, knight e5 for black. What else can you consider? Something tricky, something to stop or prepare in some smart way also for bishop d2.
Question is, I think we should figure out, if we are playing here with black pieces, we should figure out what is the piece setup that white is going for. So king d1 is obviously coming to protect the pawn on b2, but is it on c2? Is it on c1? Where is it going? I think this is like the first question that has to be answered, and when we answer that question, we can start to think on how to stop it, really.
Yeah, I think this is what Jacob is now considering. Like, he initially shocked or at least slightly surprised by the king d1 move, and now he is trying to figure out, okay, so what is this king d1 intending? What's the plan? Where is the king going? And all other pieces. So yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that ideally he's somewhere looking on getting bishop to c3, then rook on the side and king coming to c2 to
Yeah, I
already
think so
secure it
too.
all. But that is a lot of moves.
So let's say bishop d2, bishop c3, rook d2, king c2, and rook from b1 to d1, and that's a dream scenario for white if it's possible. But black will probably do something to make it not so smooth.
And also, even when we get the bishop on c3, there's a very big problem of pawn actually being weak on e3. So some moves like knight f5 could all of a sudden appear on the board. Yeah, this is tricky. This is tricky, but Thomas is also a very tricky strategical player. He can think of all those kind of piece maneuvers. I've seen him play on the boards next to me, and the Polish Extra League, where we are playing in the same team, and also spoken about those nuances often after the games. And it's like he's thinking deep. He's thinking deep about those placements and exactly about the plans, about those piece setups. So yeah, he probably feels that the position is such where black is not able to force anything to direct, and that maybe he feels he has time to go for his ideal setup.
Very interesting. It was a really good moment that we are following in this very moment. Yeah, when the king d1 was played, we've seen the reaction from Jacob, and now he has to figure it out. He has to figure out what to do at the time, because my opponent didn't go for the most direct development, didn't go for attack, didn't do what I was expecting to. He plays a seemingly passive move, but can I do something with the time that I got now? Yeah, maybe this h5 move, because sometimes really g4 from white could come. And after h5 we are getting a little bit more space, especially if knight f5 is sometimes planned. Then also g4 cannot take this square away from us and on f5 and just get this space we were talking about that white could be trying to go for, since white has a bishop and somehow could try to open the position up. Maybe h5.
Yeah, he has time advantage. He has 50 minutes on the clock, as we see. He's the time is ticking. But he has time, and he can afford to use this advantage that he got out of the opening, the time advantage now for figuring out how to proceed here. But actually, the tricky part might be that it's not so easy now to make a decision from the black side. It could be also the practical decision on complicating, like messing with the opponent's head a little bit, because in the other line, bishop d2, you know, we have an easy move, we go back, and we go here, we have an easy move, again, we are attacking, we have just the clear targets everywhere, so it's like those most natural moves. Right now, we are not able to play knight b6, because suddenly the rook has no moves, and plus the pawn is hanging as well.
Yeah, rook could go, I guess, still to h4 and stay alive. Putting pressure on the h2 pawn. After h3, it even has h5 square sometimes to strangely come back through d5 as well. Maybe that's possible. But yeah, probably white can take on c5.
Yeah, but the pawn is hanging, so we cannot just give it up. So there's not this, the most obvious thing that we need to improve the knight from d7. We can do it. We need to come up with something more strategical.
Maybe knight b5. Maybe anyways this exchange is not so bad.
Yeah, knight b5 is a tricky idea, especially that if we go knight c4, I was thinking, does this work? But probably not, because we can just take, and now we are the first ones to take some more pawns on. So that was just looking flashy, but it's just an exchange of pieces. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it's such a strange move, knight b5. I mean, because this knight on a3 is really a piece that, somewhere inside of you, you just want to keep it there, and you're happy that knight is so bad on a3, and now knight b5, we are inviting it to join the game. So even knight c4, or it can simply be exchanged on b5 also. But then we will take, and I guess it gives our rooks a bit more space after all.
now we're also protecting the pawn, so we're ready to bring the knight over, and
But still,
yeah.
bishop d2, and then we do what? Because knight b6, we don't have access to the c4 square, but we can go to this side, maybe knight d3 sometimes, attacking the b2 pawn.
And if bishop coming to c3, then we could consider knight c4 as a move. And yeah, another option that appears right now is a3, b3, c4. And just to blow it all up, also on that side. So yeah, I think I would prefer here to keep the knight on c4, as it feels like if there are no tactics, the knight on b5 is actually disturbing. And now we have a clear threat of bishop d2 as well in a lot of lines. We have a3, some ideas, just to fix some pawns. So that would be kind of, I think, working out for white. But that's the thing, that as a human player in this kind of situation, you're naturally looking at all those aggressive moves. You're naturally looking at the move with the knight, you're looking at how to attack some piece, how to do something like this. But it's possible that in this position there's none of this is really like the best or something, and we could be just taking space, just going positionally. Oh, and he has done it. He has done it. He is just taking space. Just play d5 exactly, not overthinking, not overcomplicating it all. And I think, yeah, that is also a very good move. Just grabbing some space, just preparing for exactly for the bishop on c3. I guess he's just ready for it.
Yeah, now Tomasz is again back here, and let's see if he has an immediate answer to this e5 move. I guess he's walking a lot during the games, right? Because before we saw him coming back to the board, now again we see him. He wasn't really there when his opponent was thinking. There are those players, they like walking around during the time when opponent is thinking. But Tomasz has to be careful about it, because he wasn't doing that great with his time management in this tournament, at least in those games we were checking. Also in this game we see he is a bit lower on the clock. So yeah, of course, when you're not thinking on your opponent's move and you're walking around, I don't think you're as focused. I am also a player who likes to walk around, so I know it very well myself. But let's see, e5 should have been one of the main moves that you expect after f6. So does he have an answer?
He's probably just thinking if the changes something for his plan or no. Yeah, when you play also e5, one thing that immediately you have to consider as an option is somewhere that black could actually go for e4 and try to block the pawn on the dark square, thus making our bishop potentially just weaker. And after e4, we get a very nice square for the knight on e5 in case f4 is not played. And if f4 is played, then we could just fix our pawns on the light squares completely here, or keep the f5 square for the knight and to start attacking on e3 immediately by fixing h5 as before, just not allowing attacks against the knight there. Okay, so he has played something. e4.
So he didn't like the prospect of e4 played by black, and indeed blocking the pawn on the dark square on the color of the bishop. So e4 is played, and now knight b5 could come once again. Or some other way black could show interest in the d4 square, because if knight goes to d4, well, it should be very nice and cozy there for the knight. So white probably in this case would exchange, and yeah, black can take. Not clear which rook should capture,
because now
actually.
The d4 square also got interesting for the rook in some ways, but how are we gonna get the rook out from b1? This is my main concern here.
And yeah, and there's still this idea of a3 and c4 in some cases, which you mentioned before.
Knight could join also in with through c5 there, and it should be okay. It should always be okay for white. Yet there are this feeling of activity that we could be just overtaking the initiative here with black. But yeah, this is of course it's an interesting strategical game. Very hard to get into the heads of the players there, but we'll be returning back to this game.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think we can take a look at the next board, board number 3. So let's take a look. We have second seed of the tournament there with the black pieces. As Tom's mentioned, he has the second best tiebreak in the tournament, which is really important when we are talking about the final standings. And this is round number 8, so we are really close to the finish line. The last round is gonna be played tomorrow. So yeah, everything is really decided in the next even less than 24 hours, because the round tomorrow is gonna be in the morning. So yeah, here we see the players.
And actually, yeah, it's also Kasper yesterday had a very, very tough moment since he had a completely winning advantage. So he had a winning attack, but we don't know exactly what happened. But I guess he just missed one of the defensive resources from the opponent and played the wrong move order for his attack, and all of a sudden just the game completely turned around, and they made a draw in a few moves, even though the game could have been won as well in a few moves from that point on. So that kind of stuff, of course, is in the back of your head right now, but he's gonna be looking to revenge himself today and to win a game. And yeah, we can also see that on the board. We'll see it in a moment. He has done everything to be aggressive today.
Yeah, we can actually see it from the beginning, because this could be an opening that many of the viewers also play themselves, because we have seen a very popular just a 2 knights variation with knight g5, and d5 is coming. Of course, there is no knight d5, after which there is a very loved by everyone online, the fried liver attack for white possible. That is a bad variation for black. That's why you will never see it on a high level knight d5 move. And here again, white can sacrifice the knight, but in a moment gets material back with some attack. So usually what you see is that black goes d5, the pawn is captured, and black doesn't immediately take it back, but goes knight a5, which actually is a long-term pawn sacrifice. Now bishop b5 was played, and after the c6 is the main move, and yeah, here queen f3. This is the moment where there are multiple options for white what to do with this hanging bishop. Queen f3 is one of the options, and now the pawn on c6 is pinned because the rook is targeted on a8. So yeah, black cannot take on b5. And yeah, this is quite a sharp, interesting line, but it happens also on much lower level. There are some variations that are just very common for lower rated opponents, players, and some for like Grandmaster chess. But this as we see can happen in any game, and it's very interesting because black sacrifices the pawn for the initiative, for some activity, for the fact that maybe white has to lose some time coming back with this knight from g5. Bishop on b5 will be hanging later. So yeah, black just has some fun ideas, and the game is really developing in an interesting way.
So this was expected by a player from white side. He was blitzing out those moves, so this is his preparation. We don't know how usually Kasper answers to this setup from the black side, if it was his main opening, like his main choice, or he's switching between different lines in case white plays this. And actually rook b8 was not expected. I thought the rook b8 is one of the standard plans, but maybe h6 is the first, and then rook comes to b8. And now, okay, so now the players are on their own. At this point the players are playing on their own, and yeah, we see that white is simply a pawn up, yet the bishop from c1 is not going anywhere just yet, and the queen and the knight, they're somewhere maybe too far away, just too advanced. And so the queen decides to retreat immediately, d3, anticipating, I guess, e4 and some ideas on the rook lifts along the 6th rank. And now knight c6, regrouping to d4, a very, very nice square on d4. And now knight d7. I guess is he just thinking maybe could attack in some of the lines?
Yeah, that's what I was expecting, honestly. So I saw this position a couple of moves back with rook on b6, and I was certain that we will see rook coming to g6. But actually, he chose something else in the game. So we can just take a look how the game is developing. Yeah, knight was hanging, so knight has to go back. And yeah, black played queen a8. So I even more was expecting that rook g6 is gonna come, because queen from a8 is looking all the way to the g2 square. But he surprised me, and in few moves, let's see. Yeah, there was an exchange, knight e2, rook c8, and after f4, I thought, come on, now you go rook g6. But he didn't. He chose rook c6, which
yeah, rook g6 feels like so natural. So it's just calling to be played right now here with the queen on a8, just to mate opponent on g2 somewhere. Maybe he didn't like some ideas knight g3, and that he managed to regroup or something, and that he assumed that like he evaluated that the compensation won't be enough just on the plain attack there. So he wanted to provoke some more weaknesses, because this does open up also the bishop, and now we have all the active pieces on the board. And without much thought, yeah, white just played bishop d2 in this position. Now we have rook d6 attacking the d3 pawn. Again, no rook g6. Again, just felt like one of the moves maybe sometimes, but yeah, he's just looking to get the pawn back first. And what do you think about this strategy? Do you think that is sufficient to actually play sometimes for a win in these kind of sharp games, just to take back the pawn and play for long term, or he should have went for the attack?
Well, Kacper Piron is 2600 Grandmaster, so I think he has a much better judgment and assessment of what can give him better chances than me. But yeah, I would expect him to go a little bit more aggressive on his opponent, put a bit more pressure on the g2 pawn. Engine also actually liked it, so it's not like just some attack which is random. But I was checking when I saw rook c6 move. I was just curious, was rook g6 really objectively a strong option, or is it just a cheap trick? But the engine also liked it, so yeah, it for sure would be more in my style, and I would be trying to put pressure on this g2 pawn. I think it must have been something he was considering, but he just didn't like it, and then he thought, okay, but I also have this option and maybe a bit more solid way. So yeah, it's always interesting to ask after the game. Yeah, if Kacper wins, maybe he would be willing to join us in the studio. He wanted one day, but it was already very late, and we were finishing the broadcast because he played one of the longest games. So maybe if he manages to win today. Now it seems to be, when you sacrifice the pawn and in general some material, it's very difficult, because always in the back of your mind you have this, you are aware of the fact that you have something less, and you are considering, well, maybe I can just take it back. But that's the trick, that if you take back the pawn, you're only evening material out. And so it's always, in general, with the playing for activity, for the compensation for the material after you sacrifice it, it's always about the timing and what is more valuable, because actually in chess we can in some way say that exchanging time for a pawn, it's like an exchange, and time can be equally or even more valuable. So it doesn't feel like this rook d6 is super dangerous for white, but it does ask some questions, and maybe later, after, also depending what white can do. Can white be trying to keep the pawn on d3, or do you defend? Maybe sometimes he is, still having those ideas of attacking on g2 on his radar, so he is just going to back to the other idea, and maybe he just liked to create this additional weakness on d3 just to secure that there is, there is possibility of attacking on the king side, but I also have the safe target on d3 now, which is, of course, a super weak pawn. So let's see, but the time is also not that great for Kacper.
He doesn't seem happy. He doesn't
Yeah.
seem like he does. We see a lot of different expressions from him here in the end, but I think just right now he just is not happy with his position.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the most obvious move and the biggest questions, the move that raises the biggest questions right now is the queen e2, just protecting the pawn and attacking the pawn in the same time.
Yeah, and also it also is doing all other things that white wants to do, because the queen is not developed. It connects the rooks, it defends the pawn on g2, so it's a very nice multitasking type of move. And I just checked actually, because we see that opponent of Kacper Piorun with white pieces. We have Ilan Parthi from India, and I was checking his age because he seems a bit smaller than Kacper, and yeah, he's 15 only, and I think that's the biggest trick nowadays. We all know how dangerous players from India are, and especially, the younger, in general, the chess player, the more scary it is, regardless of where they are from, because nowadays just kids study so much, they play so much online, they're just so super sharp. So yeah, 15-year-old Indian player against the second seed of the tournament here in a sharp position, so this can be an extremely interesting game.
Yeah, but it also could die out as well rather quickly. So queen e2 would be still keeping it all very, very sharp. But what if we just played something like queen f3? Just if we were looking to really quiet this game down, queen f3 would be the move, doing all the same things, defending, but in the same time looking to exchange queens. And if we do go for the queen exchange, that compensation, it should be there for black. They should be able to take back the pawn, but it will come with the cost of a lot of piece exchanges, which should simplify to a rather big equality. And that is one of the reasons actually why I don't like the move rook c6 and the whole idea now with the knight getting out to c3, because it does open up white's queen. It's like white is suddenly able to finish development, which was a big issue a moment ago. But yeah, those are also tough choices, because queen e2 seems to be more natural than queen f3, at least visually, because it's not like you're asking for exchanges, right? You're just looking to defend and attack in the same time, while queen f3 is such a, okay, I want to play totally safe kind of move. And at least for me personally, it's always very hard to make those moves.
Yeah, it's a big question now how to approach this position. I would for sure not go for the queen exchange, I guess, but it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense because this queen from a8 could be tricky. So it also we've seen in the last couple of moves, black had those possibilities of attack, and of course a player with white pieces, he knows that they were there, and probably he was concerned about them, so it could be also tempting to just exchange the queen, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. But yeah, this is interesting.
And the player is not even looking at the board.
He is just thinking everything is inside the head. The whole battle for chess players, sometimes it plays out inside of your head. There are some players who even leave the playing hall, and especially if it's like some nice area outside, and they just sit and in the fresh air think about the game, calculate all the variations. So yeah, it can happen.
Or he's just struggling which move to choose, and it's not about the calculation anymore, it's just about the choice.
But yeah, now he's totally that's interesting to do.
It's like you would be in a school in a test trying to find the some cheat paper on your lap so that the teacher wouldn't notice what you're doing. Of course, that's not the case here. It's just that That was somehow my visual association of
Yeah.
me during the school years.
Greetings to all the teachers of Tom's. But yeah, that looked really funny. Nice, nice, nice.
Yeah, so it doesn't seem very that he's too worried about position. He just is trying to somehow make a decision.
Yeah, but he's going a bit lower on time, so yeah, the time on the clock for both players is around half an hour. So let's see if the queens are gonna stay on the board or not in this game. I think we could take a look at the next board, and I wanted to say board number 5, but actually no, I think this a little bit evened out. Maybe board number 6. Because there the position is really interesting. So yeah, let's take a look at board number 6 and matchup between International Master Joseph Girel and Grandmaster Paul Velten. That one seems to be quite interesting. I don't know, from both sides, but White seems to be having quite a nice attack. So let's take a look at the board. Yeah, here we have the players. Joseph Girel was one of the leaders. He had a little bit worse result in the last 2 days, I believe. But he is still right there behind the leaders at the moment. I will quickly check how he is, yeah, because since he was performing really well at the beginning in the first rounds, so his tiebreak is very good as well. I think 4th tiebreak in the tournament, and so he's currently on the 5th position, so he is on a very good spot to attack the very, very top places and fight for the top 3, or maybe even for the first place if somehow results end up in some favorable way for him. Paul Velten doesn't have such a great tiebreak, but actually he's also looking great in this tournament. So let's see what is happening here. This White's attack seems to be very dangerous. Is it so, Toms?
Oh, it's that is hard to say if it is for sure so, but I would agree that it does look scary. It does look very, very scary, and I would not feel comfortable here with playing with black pieces. And also not only because of the attack, we are a pawn down at the moment, and the pawn, if before pawn actually gets secured, then we have 2 extra pawns on the queen side, which could lead to rather dangerous endgame prospects with 2 passed pawns. And yeah, now you have to really, really focus here from the white. Do you go for an attack, or actually do you try to save the pawn somehow? So, of course, we could try to save. The big problem is that the bishop on c2 is hanging, so we can't simply go a3, since the opponent's knight is gonna take our knight, we'll recapture, and queen c2 is gonna follow here. But what about bishop takes e4? Doesn't that keep a pawn? So let's say we take, and then we take on b7, queen recaptures, we recapture, and that is a full pawn up for white, if I'm not mistaken.
I guess, yeah, for now there are 2 pawns, so black will take one, but 1 pawn on the b file is still there. But I guess black has a lot of activity, because now the attack for white doesn't seem to be going anywhere, and the fact that white pushed the pawns on the king side quite a bit also weaken white's king. Yeah, black has some tricks on attacking the pawn on b2, on the c file, and if bishop from d4 ever goes away, bishop coming to c5 could be annoying. So I guess black has quite a lot of activity for this pawn.
Yeah, that sounds right. And yeah, I'm just calculating some lines, trying to figure out something else on the board. No, what Anna said is, yeah, very, very, very correct.
If we are attacking, can we try to keep more tension? So I would prefer to keep more pieces on the board. Can white also include taking on g6? First, let's take. No, apparently
I
it's
guess
silly.
we can just lose a piece like this.
And we take on h7, but it doesn't give us anything. Okay, so that's not great. And the problem is if I take this knight, then again bishop on c2 is going to be captured by the queen. So again, it's a problem. So what do you do? So
we could take on c6. Of course, you have to take with the queen. I guess there's no other option. And now we have two pieces hanging, but we can include some move like rook c1. The question is, do you dare to take on b4 in this very moment?
you mean because the rook is hanging, the rook is looking at the queen?
Yeah, that is exactly why. And the attack could also just, thanks to this fact, be getting very, very quick and dangerous. I don't know, f5 seems like the move. That was my first intuition here, just to somehow use this bishop coming on this diagonal in case you recapture in this manner. And now both of my bishops are coming for the king. Like every single piece in white's position is all of a sudden active, and it seems like Evaluation Bar is agreeing with f5 being a good move here.
Wow, f5 is really cool, but what after ef? Really bishop b3 or?
Or first we take on g6, forcing the queen takes g6. Since you are not able to take with the pawn, that would lose the queen.
What about the h-pawn?
So if you take here the h-pawn, then I am feeling very comfortable, because I'm just gonna go and checkmate you.
Yeah.
Okay, not like this, because bishop c5 is gonna come.
It's not so easy. It's not so easy. Okay, it's but f5 seems to be a great try.
But I like bishop b3 here. I like really bishop b3 as the main move.
And then e6 is somewhere there, and then we can take on g6 and just suddenly break everything open. Wow, if this
And there's
works,
no bishop z5 idea any longer.
Okay, so Joseph takes on c6. He just took, and now let's see if he's gonna go for rook c1. After taking, it seems the most reasonable to just defend the bishop. Bishop will be hanging, so you bring a new piece to the game, and you just defend the bishop, creating some new tricks. Let's see if f5 is gonna be played. That is a really cool move.
Yeah, but just that was the first move that is always coming on the mind. If you're attacking, then you gotta do it full swing. Yeah, if you started already, then you have good grounds to continue as well. The h5 pawn is very, very helpful here for all those attacking ideas, for undermining the structure by the king. So queen c6 I think is played. Yes, queen c6 is played, and let's see, is he gonna go for rook c1? It seems like the most natural move anyways. I think he's gonna go for rook c1, but the question is, will he play f5? Yeah, rook c1 is on the board. I think there was no other logical move. And of course also question, do you take here with black? Do you dare to take on b4? Because you have some other simpler options here, and but those could leave you 2 pawns down, which is which is tricky.
Yeah, it's really scary, and f5 could be missed because, okay, of course both players are much better than me, but I didn't see that it's so strong, f5. I was more focusing on the dark squares and maybe taking on g6 using the h file, but f5, it's after bishop b4, f5 is for the time being a pawn sacrifice.
He took something.
What did he do?
He took on b4.
He took on b4, so now white has a chance to play this brilliant move f5 that Tom's found without help of the engine, I think.
Yes, I'm not using an engine. Just Evaluation Bar to confirm or completely
to confirm
deny
that
the
we
ideas.
cannot play chess, yes. f5 is now a chance for white, and the Evaluation Bar is going really high, so it's around +2, I guess, right? If it's around this point, even more.
Even more, yes, like +3 over.
Wow, so f5 for Joseph, and this gives him if he wins today, he has a great situation before the last round in the tournament. f5 is so so strong, but not obvious because black can take and there is nothing immediately supposedly happening, but the bishops just control the board. And look at the king side of black. There are so many pawns but almost no pieces, and white can just crash through on those diagonals. So let's try to see this variation. Let's say queen b5, because there are not that many squares.
We don't have any way to leave the queen on the 6th rank. That is a very big issue, I think.
Yeah, and now white takes or e6.
I think we just take on g6. This is looking nice. I think you get a recapture. And okay, what about... Okay, e5 is hanging, so I guess I don't manage queen h4. Queen h4, you take, I go bishop g5, and you have check on, or just queen h8.
Yeah, because for white the plan could be queen h4, bishop g5, bishop f6, and just checkmate on those dark squares. But black with queen e5 is going to get some access to those squares as well. But what about e6? Like, what does black even do here? Because we just want to take on f7, and if black takes, we take, and the bishop is just helping us to crash through. We also open the diagonal of a1 and h8, so if ever king g7, we can bring the bishop and also checkmate on the same square h8, but just from this side.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine what move do you play, because even in moves like this, we could play some intermediate moves. I don't think we need to, but we could even just force you to take and then just play the position like this casually.
Yeah, now still bishop d5 is there, I guess, but rook c8 seems to be... What did he do? He played something. Was it f5?
No, bishop b3.
Bishop b3 is on the board. Okay, maybe it's still possible to change the move order and play f5 in the next move. It's still...
I assume that now after f5 you'll be able to take queen takes e5, and that should release some pressure there.
Oh wow, f5 was such an exciting chance, but okay, Joseph doesn't also have that much time on the clock. He's on 25 minutes, and you have to be careful because... Yeah, you don't want to go too low on time. You don't want to create this huge difference between yourself and your opponent, so he just plays a very practical move, bishop b3. Queen is on d7 though, not on b5, so maybe f5 now is still an option.
Maybe f5 now is an option, so we cannot take on f5, that we know. Yet, what about other moves? Now we can perhaps take on c1, get one of the rooks away from there, and what's next? How do we stay in the game? Perhaps rook c8? Looks very wrong. Looks very, very wrong. Now this is no life. This is not the way to live. This is looking very, very, very bad. There is just too much pressure along this diagonal. So how do you actually here play with black? How do you stay in the game after f5? Maybe bishop d5.
Just to defend this diagonal, because we've seen if black takes, then after e6, just white breaks through, so maybe just to defend, but it still looks very bad for black. And the question is if this move f5 is at all something that Joseph Gabriel is considering, because it is not so obvious. With the bishop on b3, I guess it's a little bit more natural to be considering it, because now the bishop is already there. We have all those taking on g6 and just putting pressure on those black pawns, because all of the pawns for black are on the light squares. So attacking them when we attack the king makes all the sense, but he could be missing it. Let's see.
And what do we play alternatively here? Do we just consider something like rook d1 as a move?
I guess rook d1, because just a moment ago you were trying to exchange some rooks for black as some defensive resource, so maybe just avoiding this.
And stopping bishop d5 ideas, because now bishop d5 seems somehow counterintuitive to put it on the same file as the queen. So perhaps now the queen move is necessary somewhere, and we could be looking for some breakthroughs. Perhaps takes f5 now. Yeah, but we still need, I think, this f5 idea somewhere. And now that the position there is so weakened, we break through once again. And again, we are looking for e6 ideas.
Yeah, this is something that we've already seen today. Almost identical position. Maybe this version is even better for white, with rook on d1, rook being able to join the attack. So still a lot of attacking possibilities for Joseph Girel, and Paul Velten is hoping that somehow white is not going to manage. Something else is played, queen g3, I think. Yeah, so he is focusing a bit more on those dark squares, but that seems to be not the best, because maybe this is what black needed.
Yeah, I would now be very happy to go for this exchanges here.
There is also a move bishop d2 that I think could be played, because black yeah, it's very strange, because white could just pin this bishop, but of course then bishop e3 comes with a check, so black is not losing their pieces on the d file. And just to exchange this bishop, because that gives black also some attacking possibilities against white's king, and exchanging the bishop that could be checkmating the king, why not? Makes sense.
Yeah, and I really like the idea of removing this bishop from e3, since, yeah, like, if the e-pawn starts moving, the game is on. The game is on also from the black side. All of a sudden we have active ideas, we have game happening, so yeah, I like this move as a defensive idea a lot. I don't know if with the rook exchange or without, but bishop d2 is certainly a very nice one.
And someone on the chat, Tom's, you just saw this f5 move, very nice attacking idea. Someone on the chat wrote that they are surprised you are not playing. Would you want to address this somehow? Especially when you are sitting here, you spot all those nice ideas, you see the players playing, so how does it feel to be so close to the tournament but not playing?
Yeah, there is whenever you see a tournament that you could be theoretically playing and you're not playing, there is this itch. Like, there is a little bit of disappointment that you are not playing, but my brain this time, maybe that's already maturity, I'm not sure, but is already understanding it, that I did return back from Canada, from a very long trip in Canada, just one day before the start of this tournament, and I don't think I would have managed to just physically to perform on the necessary level anymore. But of course, it's not easy. It's not easy to see those players play there, all those chances to win the games, to win the tournament, and so on, and not being able to take part. Yeah, there is this hunger inside that is not satisfied.
But hopefully soon. But actually your next tournament is not that soon, right? Do you have something planned before the Olympiad that is going to be, and you will play for Latvia, of course? Do you have something planned? I am also interested to know.
No tournaments. Maybe some team matches here and there, but no tournaments before that. Since Olympiad is actually rather soon, already in 1 month it's gonna be starting, so not that much time left till then.
Yeah, and also some of the players from this tournament will be participating in the Chess Olympiad in Budapest, which of course is always for the best of the best from each country. So yeah, it's really nice to see them preparing here for their start in the most important tournament of the year, probably for them. I think let's take a look at some other game. Now Paul Velten will be figuring out how to defend this position as black, but now his chances are actually more realistic to do so successfully. So should we go back to the leaderboards, or should we take a look at some other game?
Unless you notice something very, very fun, I think we can return to the leaderboard.
Yeah, I think we can just take a look, especially first two boards are super crucial. That's where we have our leaders. So let's go back to board number 1. So this is our critical matchup of the day. So one thing that is still there is white is heavily up on the clock. You see even here 7 minutes on the clock for black. White's clock wasn't visible, I guess, here, but Nicolas still has almost 40 minutes. Yeah, here we see this 39 minutes. Now after knight h4, it is white to move. Before we liked this position for white, quite a bit of exchanges happened. Has it improved black's chances to defend?
Yeah, I think the worst is behind, at least on the board. Not on the clock, but on the board the worst is already behind here, and especially still if you get the knights off the board, then it becomes, I think it becomes just objectively already equal. Like, it's more pleasant for white because we always have the weakness, but objectively speaking, I think it is already equality, since there are not enough pieces with which to attack.
Yeah, we were both couple of moves back. We were both thinking that white has huge chances for the win. Actually, it's really only few moves. So white seemed to be having activity, the c5 square, the pressure against the c-pawn. But look at that, black just went and very nicely defended in a way that he knew what to do. He exchanged some pieces that were crucial to exchange to, for example, solve the problem of the bad bishop. So we just activate the bishop, and then white doesn't really have better thing to do than just exchange it.
Yeah, that is interesting. I would have thought that he would prefer to exchange rooks here, but I guess that's not good enough, since this rook is too dangerous along the second file, and we don't want to keep it on the board. So we are forced to exchange bishops here. And and now weakening also the first rank a little bit with these kind of moves. So rook b1 ideas and some checks are in the air. Even in this moment, like if it was black to move, I think black would not take on f3. They would first give a check, force the king to h2, then play queen d6, force the pawn to g3, and then take the knight for free.
Yeah, there are even such ideas. But yeah, here it was very nice. Rattenfall had faced quite a big pressure because we've seen that Nicolas Teodoro was incredibly well prepared for this game. His prep worked. He had 1 hour 36 on the clock, and players started with 1 hour 30. So he managed to gain quite a lot of time just by making his moves really quickly. And yeah, sometimes when you have a little bit worse position, you think that, okay, I should exchange some pieces, but actually some exchanges can weaken your position, and they can just bring opponent better prospects. But here those exchanges were really good for black, because those pieces that were exchanged, those were just simply very decent pieces for Nicolas, and now he doesn't have them. It is more difficult for him to create real pressure. And black also has those threats of putting some pressure on the king with rook b1, maybe attacking the a-pawn sometimes. And yeah, white will have to be careful, especially about the king.
Yeah, so what are some lines? Do you go for first knight e5 or knight h4 as your main candidate here in this position?
I think if you want to win, you would like to make knight e5 work, just to keep a little bit more pieces on the board. It feels a bit scary with the knight on h6 though, and you have to calculate, can you even afford to leave this knight on h4? So I think this is a matter of calculation. So we can try to fashion some lines like rook b1, king h2, and how does black? Yeah, queen g5, wanting to checkmate. But yeah, then there is this f4 move, which is really nice. The rook from c2 is suddenly defending, so there is no checkmate on g2. And I think this is something that white should try to keep chances for the win alive. Do you agree, or would you just take on h4? If white takes on h4, still there is this pawn on c6 that is a bit, we were already mentioning it before, that is a weakness in the position. So white can of course still try here.
One thing that I like about this position is the queen f5 move. It's very, very visually appealing. If he can get the queen f5, almost forcing queen d8 back because we had some ideas of queen d7 and queen c8, winning the pawn. And like this is the kind of position that you just always feel comfortable in. But is it enough? Is it enough to actually create winning chances?
And Nicolas takes on h4, so I guess he is about to go for it. And maybe he doesn't really think for now so deeply is it enough, but he knows that this position gives him some practical chances, and also he will put pressure on his opponent's time because his opponent is down to 8 minutes. I think we'll see queen f5 on the board right away.
Yeah, probably. It should be the move. It's just such a nice square. So many
Yes.
ideas connecting with this move. Well, alternatively, he could consider something like a4.
But he played queen f5.
Okay, so queen f5 was his idea. So because a4, if he can get the pawn to a5 and then in connection with rook c5, maybe that helps us to target the c6 pawn. And right now, with all our pieces still being on the queen side, probably a5 is not really yet working because we actually can go take the pawn, as opposed to after queen f5, queen d8. After rook c5, all we need to do is make a move with the rook, and the pawn on a5 would be well guarded. But queen f5 is on the board. We're gonna see probably rather quick reply from the his opponent, since he doesn't have much time, and queen d8 here seems to be simply the only automatic move, only such a move that you can make without spending all your time, and it cannot be a bad move. We are just going back to defend the weaknesses, and if we take care of all our weaknesses, then queen and the rook on the board is not sufficient material actually to break through unless we help.
Yeah, and this is, I think, what was just played. We've seen the player, yes, and we have confirmation on the live board. Queen d8 was the move. And yeah, now black is very solid. There is the c6 pawn that is always some slight issue, but black can also sometimes bring rook to b1, try to attack the a2 pawn, maybe with rook a6, or somehow maneuvering the pieces, and also simply a little bit wait. What does white want to do? If you were playing it with black against a little bit higher rated opponent, how confident would you be? Would you be worried at all?
Yeah, I would be worried because I would just not be comfortable. But I would also realize that it's not enough, that I need to help my opponent to actually win this game, and I just gotta stay alert, stay focused, and it's gonna be everything okay here. And one of the things that in these structures we sometimes see happen is that black tends to favor the active defense over the passive defense, and they sometimes start to get too hungry for the a pawn, and they go for the a pawn and they lose the c6 pawn, and then the d5 pawn is almost automatically lost. The moment you lose the c6 pawn, d5 pawn becomes very hard to defend. And this kind of endgames, exactly, if you lose those two pawns but take the a pawn, then it's all of a sudden probably most of the time just winning for white. Since those central pawns are just too solid, too easy to advance, and one single a pawn cannot get too far. So it's important in these positions just to stay solid and just to think about opponent's threats, and if opponent is trying to lure you into some very tricky complications, not to get too ambitious to finish the game very easily, because you're not going to be playing for a win here with black. So all the active lines, the only points of them is probably just to force a draw. But if we have a kind of a fortress type of position on the board, then by the idea we should not be interested at all in any forced lines whatsoever.
Yeah, it's always tricky because you have to be able to evaluate. So now every change that is going to appear on the board, every exchange of the pawn, you have to know whether it's not favoring your opponent too much. So yeah, black will still have to defend it. And it's tricky with 7 minutes on the clock. and against your opponent who has 32 minutes and who is extremely strong and seems to be also ready for just patiently trying to win this position. He doesn't also risk so much. Nicolas has the best tiebreak in the tournament, I think, right? Yeah, his tiebreak is the highest. So yeah, he has the comfort, and let's see if he will manage. I think that now, just to check a little bit away from the leaderboards, and once again reminding that especially on Twitch you can leave some comments if you would like to see some specific game. Maybe we can take a look at the board number. Let me just check. 24. I think this is the last live board. We have FIDE Master Maurice Sheepers playing there against International Master Hasan Selik, and it seems to be a fun game. Also, we've seen Hasan Selik before playing on one of the top boards. We haven't seen Maurice. Maurice is a good friend of both of us. It's nice to see him so high, but I chose this game because it just simply looks like a very fun position to analyze, and there is some nice attack going on for white. So let's see. I think attacking games are always fun to follow, so yeah, just let's take a look at that.
Oh wow, yeah, the king on h8, that is not feeling very natural, especially the queen on h3 and this whole diagonal being open. Not a single piece, not a single pawn blocking it. So all we gotta do is get the bishop over there on some of the empty squares and we're winning the game.
Yeah, so just to show you, actually the game right above me is the one that we are following. So the players on the very left, I believe, of the screen are the ones that from this game on board number 24. And yeah, it is also fun because, fun. So the lower rated player is pushing, it seems here. We have this pawn on g5. We have, as Thomas mentioned, this open diagonal, the dark squares. And the problem for black is there is no dark square bishop. Black's dark square bishop somewhere got lost. And so it looks like a really difficult game. So knight on a4 is trying to hold basically this position. Interestingly, knight on a4 is one of the most important defenders of the king, right? It's always so cool to see how suddenly a piece that is somewhere completely else, but it's doing important job.
But in the same time, it could turn out that it is also, in few moves, the most useless piece that black has.
So?
If the bishop gets somewhere in, or simply like bishop e3 coming to d4, all of a sudden knight has no purpose.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. White can go around, and as we know, knights, there is often said that about knights that they have short legs, kind of in chess. That's the case. They are pretty slow, especially here. So many squares are controlled, and knight really doesn't have a white choice. And yeah, black doesn't have this dark square bishop, so if white manages to get control, it's going to be devastating. The pawn on g5 is really cool. The knight on h5 for white can jump to f6. There can be also pressure on the h7 pawn. As you see, the queen is ready. So do you think, Toms, that there are chances for black to defend it?
It's gonna come down to some very to make a decision from white in which moment we go for the point, for the kill, I would say, and not to do it probably too hastily. For example, in some lines like this, maybe bishop e5, like d4 immediately would not work because e5 all of a sudden is there and blocks off all the squares and takes away the possibilities from our bishop. So I think that if white plays it out correctly, let's say that, like proper, like just prepares all the pieces before going for the decisive blow, I don't think there are any chances. So for example, I'm wondering, can I just take on c4 in this case with the threat of bishop takes e6 and bishop d4? Seems to be working, so we cannot take on b5 even. So I'm just wondering, okay, and if you do play something like e5 here with black, just trying to close it down, I was thinking the simple move like rook d1 and just attacking the next weakness. just bringing in the game the last piece that is not doing anything. And if we do prepare all the pieces and they are working, and these guys are not gonna defend the king in any way. So if all our pieces are attacking and there are 3 pieces for black that are not defending, then yeah, I think white should be able to convert this game.
It's a bit sometimes difficult when you are attacking to start to focus on just bringing your rook to the center, right? Somehow, oftentimes, as we try to just find an immediate way. For example, I think for 99%, what I would be considering in this position, which is probably pretty bad, is something like king f2 and rook h1, and then knight f6. So just trying to directly put a checkmate on h7. It has to be not very reasonable, though, right? But maybe it somehow works. Are you laughing at my idea?
No, I could just totally see that this is something that you play here, but no, it could work. It has a lot of point, of course. I mean, it's a checkmate. Doesn't matter what opponent takes on the other side of the board. If the end goal for us is checkmate, and if we succeed with it, I mean, that's it. We don't care about anything more. Yet I'm just thinking if they will not get some defensive resources. Let's say that like. I'm worried that it's too many moves. Let's that is my only concern, that it's too many moves, and that we.
Toms is trying very, very strongly not to tell me that my idea is just stupid. You're doing well.
That's not true. I did think about this idea as well. That was my first thought. I mean, this is so appealing. Queen is on h3 just to checkmate. And actually, the position is on the board. Bishop e3 was played and e5 was also played. And I think that rook d1 is right now just very, very naturally strong move. But maybe king f2 can be played. Just now, especially with the center blowing up, feels like we might not manage.
Yeah, unfortunately, knight on e4 is gonna give a check to the king, but it's also going to control this f6 square, so we won't manage to do it. Yeah, it's quite a cool idea and could be considered. But yeah, here actually this knight that Toms was mentioning that is out of the game on a4 now can join the game. So yes, unfortunately, the idea is not the best.
Yeah, but I think great chances for Morris here, and there has to be a lot of ways how to play for a big advantage. I mean, rook d1 is just an idea, just to bring in one of the pieces that are not playing. But oh, he went for c5. He goes for c5, just undermining the pawn chain in a different way. And the point of undermining this pawn chain is, if we get bishop on d4, we're winning, right? So to do that, we gotta get rid of those pawns. So c5 is just an attempt to work towards that.
But it's also a nice move. Yeah, it's all, not all, but so much of this game and position is focused on the dark squares. And this is just a fight for the dark squares, just going for getting control of them. So yeah, very exciting position, and some upset could happen here on this board. Upset is what we call in chess if a lower rated opponent beats a higher rated one. So yeah, it's a nice chance here for Maurice, and c5 is a nice strategical move, I think.
Yeah, very, very, very nice. With the same idea like rook d1, exactly attacking this pawn chain and just also avoiding any tactics with taking on c4, just not having to worry about that in anymore at all. So there is no risk to stay there without any material, and will be. Oh wow, bishop e4 was actually played. I wanted to say that. We could be going for a break, but okay, let's take a look at bishop e4 here. And what is the point of this? What if you just take the pawn?
Well, white went to c5 just to take on d6, and then take on e5 and just break through. Maybe rook c3 is his idea now, but okay, maybe let's say rook c3.
Rook c3. Oh wow.
And just maybe that if white takes, he has got f4. Does he even have f4?
I think he doesn't. We have
Doesn't feel
e6.
like.
Those are some monster pawns coming, and now you're almost obliged to take on e3 because bishop d4 is coming. So you would need to be taking here, but that just leaves you without an exchange, and still, and a pawn exchange and a pawn. That is not a good situation to be in. And a knight on a4, still on top of all of that.
Yeah, so now Maurice is thinking, can he just pick up the pawn on d6, do what he intended to do? When you play against a good opponent, as in this case Hasan Salik, he is 2400 rated player, international master. So I think in such situation, after c5 you see bishop e4, you're asking yourself, what is the idea? Because obviously my opponent, he needs to have some idea, right? So you're trying to figure it out, and sometimes you can start doubting yourself. And we've seen in this tournament as well that actually it was one of the young Turkish players, but I think it wasn't Hasan Salik, who had a similar game against Pa Inian. He could just take some material, but he trusted his opponent that it is not really possible. So it was a similar case that your opponent just gives something, you can take it, but yeah, for some reason you don't, and maybe it's some trust or too much respect to your opponent is involved, but I think he will take.
I think he will take as well. I mean, nothing seems to be working in any way, just all the white pieces are ready, and on every black trick, it's not like we have to do an only move. We have multiple options that still secure winning advantage. No, he didn't take, he went rook d1.
Okay, he didn't take, but I think rook d1 still has to be good. Still it has to be good, right?
It's not so crushing, but yes, it is also great. Also a great move. The position is just too fantastic. The position is too amazing. Like everything is working. If you take here, now we have so many options. Maybe just knight f6 now, with the threat of rook d7.
So after all, bringing the rook there to the h7 pawn somehow, different route, but still.
And now in the case of something like rook d8.
Maybe just take on c5.
We could take on c5, but then we give up on f4. So maybe we can start by taking on e5.
Yeah, just break through those pawns on the dark squares. Yeah, seems to be a great position.
Yeah, so unless some tricks are missed, this should be winning for white in all sorts of ways. And yeah, and it's kind of crazy in these open tournaments. We were following Hasan Salik games because he was playing on the top boards in the beginning of an event. He started with 3 out of 3, then he drew 2 games with very strong grandmasters, and then just followed a loss against Lamart, and then again he was playing some little bit lower rated opponents who are still playing very great chess, and he was stopped to a draw in the previous round, and now he is in big trouble and could be, instead of actually fighting for the very first places in tournament, from how it looked in the beginning of an event, could be just even losing rating and being in the second half of the table.
Yeah, that is true. That is so painful. Sometimes when things go your way, you're getting this hunger. You're thinking about what this tournament could do for your rating or for the tournament, and maybe winning the prizes as well. But then suddenly you're starting to meet those opponents who are lower rated, and you should be getting points with them. But it's so difficult because so many people nowadays, they can play really good chess. More and more people know theory really well. They know some tricky variations. So yeah, it's not easy now. Big trouble for the Turkish player. Not sure if he can solve them. White's position seems to be just great because all the pieces are active. All the pieces are taking part in the game. There is no weakness for white, and huge issues with the king for black, and with the dark squares. If white breaks through, then that will be probably game over.
Yeah, so yeah, good luck to Morris and the rest of the game here. And we could go for a very, very short break and then be back with all the intense action of round 8.
Yes, so stay tuned. As you see, there are still a lot of games going on the stage. Those are the most important ones. So we'll come back to you after a break and take a look at the action there. Hello and welcome back to the coverage of the Riga Technical University Open 2024. We are already on the 8th round of the tournament, so only today and tomorrow, and round number 8 is ongoing. It's already very yes, here you see the players. It's already in a very late stages. Some of the games already finished. Some of the games that are ongoing are reaching slowly the time trouble. So there is a lot going on now. And one of the crucial games that we were following today between Joseph Girel and Paul Velten also finished recently, so we'll just give you a very quick recap of that because Joseph Girel won and he is going to be joining the leaders, and before tomorrow's game he's going to be very high in the standings, maybe even sharing the first place, certainly somewhere high because his tiebreak is also one of the best in the whole tournament. So let's take a quick look at his victory against Grandmaster Paul Velten. Let's see the board, and then we will just give you a quick recap of this game.
Yeah, so we left it around this point where we were considering that f5 is a very interesting attacking idea just to break the game open. The game followed, but it's complicated. It's very complicated. It's very easy for us just sitting here and not having any responsibility for players. They see a lot of things, giving up pawns, giving up pieces. It's much more difficult. And so there was an attempt to exchange the Sletsker bishop, and yeah, just bishop exchanges happened, and white went for f5 a moment later, just breaking open everything against black's king. And here actually followed a very interesting looking sequence. So after taking, took on g6, and here I guess player with black pieces, he just missed some of the possibilities to transform this game into opponent game, and here followed rook f7, funny looking move, which actually doesn't threaten on its own like immediately anything, but it's just getting ready for all the real big threats. So we would like to just take, and then we would just like to go for the checkmate. So now it's a very strong idea, and this was missed for sure by the player with black pieces. And what happens here is a forced sequence where we give a lot of checks. We force the king near the pieces where we can actually exchange everything and go for a pawn endgame, where white has this fantastic situation of potential passed pawns on the two different sides of the board, and that is just enough to win. And doesn't matter that black has here 3 pawns in the middle of the board. They are not able to do anything on their own, and very quickly the pawns just promoted in the queen. Of course, we had to make some moves with the king to make sure that the opponent doesn't promote before that, and now one pawn is running, another pawn is running, and just nothing can be done about it.
Yeah, that is always so crazy with the pawn endgames, because if suddenly your game can transpose to pawn endgame, you need to know that it's possible. You need to know what is the evaluation. Otherwise, you can lose like this. And yeah, I think it's a very good example how, despite the fact that black, as Tom's mentioned, had so many pawns in the center and they are connected, actually in pawn endgames, oftentimes it's better to have pawns on two different sides, because as you see, king cannot catch them both. In Polish, we call it pans. Do you also call it like this in Latvian? I don't know.
No, no, we don't have this kind of term. At least I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, and it's like one is going, other is going, so it's like two separate. I don't know if it's in other languages, but yeah, the idea is that just from one side, pawn will go, and if king goes to this side, then it's not that this pawn has to continue, but the other one can go forward, and it's just not possible to catch them both. Yeah, very funny looking end game, to be honest, but very painful to lose such, I think, from the black side.
Yeah, well, the funny thing was about this for me, that it was a position with two rooks and a queen for each side, and then just with this one rook f7 move, we are forced all of a sudden in a pawn endgame. Just out of nowhere, everything gets swapped off. I think that player of black, he just never expected that. If you have even one rook on the board, those central pawns should bring enough compensation that nothing so bad should be happening. But there, all of a sudden, it's just everything gets swapped off, and you're just left with kings and pawns.
Yeah, so that means for Joseph Girel great news, because yeah, his tiebreak is very high and he wins his game. So we'll see the standings tomorrow before the game. We'll know everything very clearly, but still for him that is a great position before the last round of the tournament. So now let's jump back to the leaderboards, I think. Let's see board number 1 and 2.
Yeah, let's see board number 1. Let's start by board number 1. There is not very big development, but
we have to update you. This crucial game where two leaders are facing each other in a direct encounter, and White is trying to push a little bit. Nicolas advanced the pawns on the king side. Even the king was advanced as well, but it seems that black is keeping the position quite solid.
yeah, for now, black was keeping the position together very nicely, but one issue is that the time that Teodoro has finally succeeded in pushing his opponent in a complete time trouble, and we see that yeah, he's playing on the last seconds, and as it often happens when you play on the last seconds, something can be missed, and it's actually just on the last move, rook a6. Look at that, look at the evaluation bar.
Oh,
we are just
wow.
here, and rook a6 is game over if white plays the strongest way. What is happening?
Oh wow, and look, actually, yeah, so this move was played on 5 seconds. Black has 35 now. Let's remember, players receive additional 30 seconds after each move, but can white just take on c6? No, or can he?
No, that should not be so bad. Okay, this is losing.
This is bad, apparently.
So the exchanging of those pawns is, was not so good, but...
maybe exchange.
But here we can play. It's a queen endgame just without one pawn. We can still live.
So, but it is some option for white. It is a pawn, but so there is something even better than taking on.
I think queen h1 is the
c6.
big problem on this line, because now our king is kind of in a checking cage, and it's not easy to escape it.
Okay, so something else than rook c6. So in the position after rook e6, I was thinking something like rook b1, rook b7, but queen is controlling the b1 square. So what else could it be?
Perhaps we simply need to push the rook away. No, that's not it. Since black also has some ideas.
Then
of
I
their
guess
own.
black is gonna take on a2, and after rook c6 now, maybe your idea of queen h1 is gonna be very strong, because now black is the first one to attack and is ready with the rook and the queen. So this seems to be losing. But what is the move? Nicolas has 14 minutes. We just see the evil bar. We don't see the engine, so we don't know what the move is. What is this move? Rook h1 also not, unless something like f3 and rook h1. No,
we have
cannot be. I am thinking how we could bring the rook to the game, but there isn't an obvious way. Just our queen, could she do something? Queen d8?
Queen d8 was the move also I was thinking about, but I did not entirely understand it.
So attacking on g5, and he plays queen d8, and we see that the evil bar says white is winning after this move. So yeah, my idea was just to put pressure, since we cannot bring the rook to the game, just put pressure on the pawn, and if black now defends it with some of like queen g6, then I think rook h1 is going to come, and yeah, that's a problem, because we are actually better prepared with our queen as well.
Oh, that is very nice. Yeah, so we cannot move the queen
And
because
if
there is a
f6,
checkmate.
and if f6, then that weakens the king as well. f6 is played, f6 is on the board, but there has to be something. There has to be something for white now. And Nicola sees it, I think. He's ready to make a move. Basically, he's just double checking because he has a lot of time. f6 was made on just 2 seconds.
I think that simply this is very, very clearly winning now.
And the problem is that this attacks the rook on a6, so this is where this rook a6 move is.
And if we do take here, we could just give a check and even just take on c6 perhaps as well.
Or f3.
Or f3, that is even nicer. That is even nicer.
Still the idea of rook h1 and after f3, even though black can take on e3, but white is right in time to start checking, even though black is basically one move away from the mate. So yes, we have queen d7 on the board. King cannot go to the 8th rank because queen c8 is a check and picking up the rook, and now after king g6, queen c8 seems to be winning also. Oh wow.
Yeah, this is the thing, a little bit like what I was mentioning. When we have the fortress type of situation, there are those moves like queen e4 that looks active. It's like you want to play it, but this is what very often the stronger side is provoking you to. And yeah, as we see now, queen on e4 was just overloaded. It needed to defend the g5 pawn and h4, h1 square in the same time, and it was just not able to do that anymore.
And we have queen g8 after rook a3 and resignation on the board one. So Nicolas Teodoro is winning, and wow. And so actually the scenario we were talking about at the beginning of the middle game here, after the opening, we saw just big time trouble for Ratan Vel, and yeah, this caused him to get a little bit under some trouble in this end game, and a very important victory for the top seed.
Yeah, this takes him way ahead of the pack, at least for the moment, and even if he's half a point ahead playing in the last round, oh yeah, that's a fantastic situation to be in, especially that he's going to be playing one of the players who is trying to catch him, who has half a point less, so a draw against this kind of player also is reduces them the competition, and so yeah, this is of course the best imaginable scenario, just to be running away before the last round.
Yeah, and we see players are exchanging some ideas about the game, both in thoughts. For sure, understandable disappointment for Ratan Vel. But yeah, very nice practical victory by Teodoro, because he wasn't trying to win straight out of the opening. He was ready for the fight. He was ready to be patient. And now we see him very deep in thought, curious what are they calculating, because I guess they are calculating something now.
Yeah, some line was suggested by his opponent, I think, and now he is trying to calculate it. And
yeah, he was like for a very long time lost in thought, and now he's answering to some. This is what we were mentioning before, that sometimes players go out of the playing hall and don't look at the board and just calculating, and we see now they are also, especially Nicolas, not looking at the board, just looking somewhere to the side, but yeah, he sees the board perfectly in his mind, and yeah, they are just calculating and discussing the variations. They don't need the board and the pieces.
Yeah, it's actually, I don't know, how is it for you after a game? For me, it's very often that when I just finish the game and I have to discuss those lines with an opponent, I sometimes I'm very, very lost because I'm just tired after the game and my brain just cannot keep up with the lines anymore in the head. I just need a physical board.
I guess no, for me that's not such a big issue. Yeah, I think most players kind of talk about their lines. Yeah, like we see here without the board really. It depends probably on the game. Sometimes the game leaves you so exhausted mentally that it's just difficult to think at all. Yeah, but let's, I guess, leave the players to it. It's quite interesting, though, to see how they are discussing this game. But victory, very important one for Nicolas Teodoro for the top seed. And let's see board number 2. Can he be caught by Jacob Payekan, who is the only player who can still do it in this round, or not? Very small chances, I believe. We have a rook endgame. And probably it is white who has more chances for the win, but white is under some time pressure as well.
Yeah, it seems like Black's defense is slipping. It's slipping, and he's gonna have to defend some rook endgame upon down. Just a few moves ago, it looked completely safe, but now just White is making very, very big progress, and Black is going backwards, which is always a very bad sign. We also got exchanged our strongest pawn, which was keeping the position here together for, and I think that Tomasz just found practically complicated. Um, mm, Practically complicated questions to ask to his opponent on how to defend the rook endgame here, and he did not manage it right now. He will have to answer, because of that, even more complicated questions. And yeah, so now the big problem is that rook is tied down to defense of the e5 pawn, and it's very, very passive. Here everything is very nicely guarded, and if we do go for some attacking lines, we are losing probably both e5 and c5 pawns, and this is what I mean, that we have to defend somewhere endgame pawn down, and c5 pawn is probably lost regardless of anything.
I just wanted to ask, it seems like rook b3 is coming and there is no way to keep this c5 pawn on the board, and this could turn to such a position that time trouble won't really matter for Tomasz Lauruszas. He is getting 2 minutes, he has 2 minutes, he's getting 30 seconds after each move, and at least a couple of moves that could be his next moves seem to be easy, especially rook b3. He will pick up the pawn, and wow, it can be very difficult for Jacob Payekan to keep this. Let's not forget, he still hasn't lost a game in this tournament. He is on 6 out of 7, just 2 draws. So yeah, the loss would be very painful here. Can he keep this somehow? What can he do? Can he somehow try to simplify the position? If white takes the c5 pawn, okay, the passed pawn is the a pawn, so maybe can Black do something? Maybe the rook g7, yeah, just counterattack.
Yeah, now we have a very tough decision. Do we risk putting the king on the a file where it's cut off and almost in a mating net? And
yeah, this is a mating net, that's the problem.
but if we don't do that, we lose the pawns with tempos, and still it's kind of half of a mating net. So it's not a good situation to be in. Okay, so here this apparently is fine. This would save the game for Black. So there is no mate.
Oh my goodness, I just saw that it seems that the second seed of the tournament lost his game.
Oh wow.
Maybe we should take a look at that quickly. I don't know if the players are still there. The result was just updated on the live board. I just seen the moves and I thought, okay, we will quickly go to it in the moment, but it's already over, I guess. If the players are not there, but maybe we should just quickly see.
Yeah, let's see what happened on board number 3.
Board number 3, we had, wow, what a game! Young Indian player Ilam Party versus second seed of the tournament, very experienced, very strong player from Poland, Kacper Piorun. we kind of like the position for black after the opening, but here, yes, this was a critical moment. Knight f5 tactic came, and it couldn't be captured, I think, by black. There was knight on e5, I guess, is hanging. So after knight is captured, there is queen g3, using the fact that the king is exposed, and that will be check and attack on the knight, and that is beginning of huge trouble for Kacper Piorun. He was already in some trouble, so maybe he even saw that this tactic is possible, but he just loses material. Now bishop b4, attacking the queen, and this forces this sequence of exchanges which leave king for black very, very exposed to all the attacks. And yeah, we see queen c8 is coming, and after king f7, queen f8, we see this bishop from before doing an incredible job as well, and after queen e8, I guess it was a resignation.
Yeah, it was a resignation, I guess, after queen e8, because there is just nowhere to go, nothing to do. King coming to f6, and we just can win the queen as the most simple solution, but probably there's also some checkmate.
Oh wow, very, very painful loss for Kacper Piorun. Incredible by the Indian players. We were mentioning only 15 years old, but yeah, something went heavily wrong here for Kacper Piorun. We were talking about this opening phase of the game. Right after the opening, black had some possibilities of going rook g6, a bit more aggressive. Kacper chose something else, and maybe there was just affecting his decisions. Yesterday's game, Thomas was mentioning, there was quite a disappointing outcome in this one, and yeah, it can mess with your game. We don't know exactly, but yeah, white overtook this one, and Ilan Party is joining the second place probably now. Yeah, shared second place.
Yeah, so the opening choice was chosen by black to sacrifice a pawn for initiative, and we felt like it did feel like this whole idea with attacking the pawn is letting white finish development, and this is exactly what happened. White was actually then just pawn up and overtaking the initiative, and so the attack was just very, very dangerous. All the pieces all of a sudden is working, and always we have this backup that we are pawn up, so black is under constant pressure, and here just followed a very interesting idea with after f5 just rook e4, using the pin on the rook, and that all the pieces are kind of shaky, and now after queen d6 trying to secure it came the next blow, and the game just was over.
Yeah, wow.
Great attacking game also. Yeah, I have to give to his opponent, because yeah, he saw his chance. He didn't go for the queen exchange. He went for the queen e2 to keep the game alive, and yeah, he just took his chance immediately. So yeah, congratulations to Ilan Party.
Yeah, I was checking his results in this tournament. He wasn't doing that great. He had some draws against lower-rated players, but that's the beauty also of the open tournaments, that you can have a little bit less success somewhere there, but a draw here and there will still not ruin your tournament totally. And then if you start winning toward the end of it, and still if you manage to beat stronger opponent here and there, then you can just skyrocket in those results at the end. So a great chance for him before tomorrow, and yeah, let's see how it's going to go for him. Now we should move on to board number 2. I think we haven't seen. No, we have seen. Do you want to see it more clearly, or?
I think all the decisive action is about to unfold there, so I think we could go follow this board. Both players are very low on time.
Yeah, actually we just have seen a lot of exchanges, so it seems to be favoring black, unless black's pieces are too far. Let's see let's just take a look. This is the crucial game that is still remaining. Board number 2, Tomasz Lauruszas was trying to push for a win against Jacob Paiken, but he didn't have that much time. Now a lot of pawns have just been exchanged, and we see rook a3, takes the a pawn, Jacob. And if we can we maybe zoom in a little bit on the players on the board, that we can also see the live board, but only one pawn for each side. Rook, of course, king, but it shouldn't be enough for the win, or is it?
Yeah, this is the big question all the time. Is it enough for the win? Well, we need only one pawn to win the game, and I think that this has a good, very big winning chances, but just in some very specific ways. And
so if we look at the bar says it's winning. Not after king d6. Maybe king c6 needed to be played just to keep the king for black more on the side.
Rook f5 was
is that
the winning move?
The only winning move?
That was the only winning move, because I had the table bases appeared for me immediately because of very small piece count on the board, and rook f5 was the only winning move in this position.
That is not a human move. Oh wow, so just for the viewers, table bases is something that...
And now we are winning again.
Oh wow, okay, here we will see some drama.
Rook d3 was the only drawing move. Oh wow, this...
So the basic problem for black is that the king is quite on the side, and it can be pushed away, and it cannot stop the e-pawn from queening. And e-pawn is the pawn that wants to queen. The h7 pawn is very far, so probably if king was by the h7 pawn, far from the e-pawn, then it's different, because king with the pawn could try to go forward. But here, king cannot help the h-pawn to queen, and it's just on the side. But there can be quite some drama here, because as we see, some only moves to win, only moves to draw.
Yeah, but this last decision was very, I think, rushed by black, because he went king b7, king c8, which is just giving up a tempo, and he did it with a lot of time on the clock without taking any time to think about it. Since the big point, what changes in this position is that the rook is now bad, it's blocking the pawn. So this is like the worst kind of situation right now for the white rook in this position. Probably, like really the worst square. And with the move king c8, we just, like with the king b7, we allowed these checks, and we just forced the rook to one of the best squares automatically. And so now white can just comfortably push the pawn, and is in time with all the ideas and all the tempos. So he had this moment to think. He had 10 minutes on the clock, and knowing how he was playing the rook endgame in one of the rounds before, I think he could have figured it out by the board if he just had taken his time.
Oh wow, maybe, he just somehow assumed that, come on, it cannot be winning with this pawn on e5. Rook endgames are so tricky, but again, I think we had a couple of examples in this tournament that it's not always about the material count. So this is material count, here it's equal, and most of the people always say that rook endgames almost always are a draw, and even if you are a pawn up or pawn down, it should still be a draw. So on an equal material, it just should be fixed. Just let's make a draw and let's go eat dinner. But it's not always the case. It's always about what can you do with your passed pawns in the end game, and of course about other pieces, how active they are, if they can help either passed pawn or to stop opponent's passed pawn. So basically, what role do they play? And here, right after black captured the a3 pawn, the pieces are a little bit on the side. It seemed like it still should be enough, but apparently even then it wasn't. Later, some super precision was required to save it, but now this e-pawn is rolling, and what can black do? Maybe rook d3. Rook d3.
Here rook d3 was saving the game, because
here rook d3,
and then because if we move the king over to the e file, we are in front of our rook, and we are making very little progress. And if we go something king c6, we can just keep checking.
And the idea is that if we push white's king away, then our king when it joins the game, it will have easier time.
And here we can just go to a draw pawn endgame.
And now our pawn on H file will do its job because it will be in time to push it forward, right? So if white takes, we just
run with a pawn, and they promote in the same time, since we need another move to remove the king from the way, and we just run, and the king tries to stop it, then we stop the pawn as well. Oh yeah, so that was some use of the pawn on H file, and now as we have the position on the board right now, the H pawn has no use at all, because the king, you have no options right now to sacrifice a rook for a pawn, and with a king and a pawn together run for the queen, because they will never manage to connect in time with each other, and that just means that the H pawn at the moment is kind of irrelevant, and white is playing out the standard one pawn rook endgame. Yeah, rook d3 is now played, king e7 I think is gonna follow immediately, exactly, and we're just gonna see e6, king is gonna be moved to e8, e7, and then the standard bridge kind of rook and king lift, and the pawn is gonna promote.
Oh wow, oh wow, oh wow. That will be very painful for Jacob, especially if he was certain it's a draw, and maybe he didn't feel the danger in time, you know, just like even you mentioned this king c8 was a mistake, and maybe if he just one move before felt that there is danger and this is a moment to start thinking, maybe he would have saved it, because we see him thinking now, but now according to the evil bar and everything, Tom's said it is too late. It is just too late. In the back we see two players, I think this is board number 8, they finished the game, so if I am not mistaken it is game between Almuthaya and Naranian Navalgund, and they made a draw, so now they are discussing peaceful outcome of the game, peaceful analysis after the game. Those two players were on 5.5 points, so now they will be on 6 out of 8, not in a fight for the first place, but one of them wins tomorrow, 7 out of 9 will be an extremely high score, so they are still fighting for the very, very top places as well.
Yeah, for the podium, the fight is on for sure for them, and yeah, in this game, I must say, very nice slow grind by Thomas here. He went straight away from the opening on this these ideas, this piece maneuvering with the king d1 and everything, just such a slow positional play, and he actually managed to simply use this pawn structure, the c5 pawn, and being weak, and this was the key. This was the key at the end of the game. He just advanced the king around it, and yeah, there was those roller coaster moments in the rook endgame, but he had actually created a winning position for himself out of nothing. So, in a way, also very, very deserved if he does win this game.
Yeah, nice. Nice, nice. This is the next level of chess. So first we have all the attacking and firework, and then we have suddenly winning out of nothing, just slowly here and there, and especially it can be a very powerful method if your opponent already kind of calms down and thinks, oh, okay, it's a draw, but there are still chances, but yeah, then it will be about feeling the danger in the right moment, finding a good moment also to focus and spend time, which we call critical moment in chess, because you cannot think about every move very deeply. Sometimes you have to make quicker decisions, then you want to spend time in the important moments, in the critical moment, but it's so hard to feel that this is the one. It's easy, or more or less easy, not even always, to feel it after the game, but during the game it's so tricky, and Thomas Laurušas is very strong in those types of positions. Now we see that Jacob Payekan is down to 3 minutes already, and he feels that this is not this easy draw that he was expecting.
Yeah, I think he knows that he's in trouble. He's trying to find something. He's trying to find something, because now this is like, he sees that it's just pawn is gonna roll, king is gonna go to the side, we're gonna check, king is again gonna hide, and then it will just be just about freeing again space for the pawn to promote, and we will just black will be forced to give up a rook, and then of course rook up in a complete endgame position is gonna be an easy win for white.
Oh, rook endgames are so painful sometimes. Wow, this is crazy. It's totally understandable of him to think it could be a draw. He defends the h pawn, but Thomas is pushing his passer, and it is gonna be way more dangerous.
Yeah, but I think he went for this position if he just returned a moment ago, because he just didn't know anymore what to do. He missed here this idea. He went for the g5, very nice move, not letting opponent to squish him, and because feeling that rook d5 is coming. So he quickly gets the rook on g5, attacking and defending in the same time. And now after the b4 move, it became very, very tricky, and I think he just didn't exactly know how to proceed here. And here followed the sequence of already a lot of such suboptimal decisions, and just king going back without a4. I think a4 was nice to provoke, because that would be a weakness switch to attack. But yeah, again, we get the king on c4 for free, and then it was just getting to this endgame by force. And yeah, here this rook f5, this is actually such an amazing idea. The pawn moves too far away from the black king to capture. It's no longer in any way in the square, so we cannot exchange the rooks.
Ah, you mean after the rook exchange?
After the rook exchange, yeah, the pawn is just too far, and we don't have to worry about h-pawn anymore, or king can catch it any moment, and we are just ready to roll. And if you try to play something like this, we still block it. We still block the king. We don't let it in the same kind of fashion. And yeah, so this is so hard. When you see it, when it's told to you, it all makes so perfect sense. And also the rook on the 5th rank is stopping h-pawn from advancing. But when you have to find it on the board, that is that is not the move that you think about, especially in a big time trouble. This is just not coming to your mind, I think, at all.
Yeah, I don't think so. It looks like some science fiction kind of move. So king d6 makes so much sense, just to push the king forward, but still it gives the winning position to white. Now rook h6, it's a very nice move. And for now, Thomas is not letting it go, and he is already up on the clock. Wow. He was not doing that great in the tournament, right? Let's take a look. He started well, but then he had a lot of draws, a lot for his level, of course, because he had 3 draws with lower rated opponents. But yeah, not a single lost game, and if he wins today, then well, he is doing again incredibly well before the last round, and he is about to take a point away from Jacob Paiken. Wow, and that is gonna be so huge, because for Jacob it also could steal chances of a Grandmaster norm.
Yeah, it probably will. Like the pairing, of course, can be anything for the last round, but it is very, very likely that unless he gets paired with somebody very strong, then yeah, he loses those chances for the norm.
Although there are quite a lot of Grandmasters that are not doing that great here in the tournament, so maybe he's gonna be lucky. But the key thing is that for Jacob, it will be very important to get a Grandmaster tomorrow, because he needs another Grandmaster, he needs a 3rd Grandmaster, and that he needs to win, and still probably some factors depending on how good his performance will be, even in case of a win. But anyway, for now he has to focus on this game. He's still trying to find something, but he is down to 50 seconds, and I guess he already understood before that he's in trouble, but I guess he is getting closer to understanding, or he already understood that this is just hopeless.
Yeah, and like looking just for some tricks, and now this rook h6 is also such a move that not willing to even consider any possibility for the tricks. We're just comfortably defending the pawn for now. We are making, this pawn is not running anywhere, so we are in no rush, and so we are preparing now a king e8 move and e7 with a check, and then already being ready for king f7 and e8, and rook is just there on f6 in case we need to cover from the checks. So such a very very effective move, just how to end the game. And okay, king c7 played. I think now king e8 we are gonna see almost instantly.
Yeah, that's the move you want to push the pawn forward, but king on e8 is still shouldering the black king, so king cannot come closer to the pawn. The only square is d6, but then after e7 we are gonna have a check also. So yeah, probably king e8. King on e8 cannot be checked, so king f8, then rook could still give a check, but on e8 we just are ready to push the pawn, so probably we'll see the seems we should...
Although maybe he's thinking if he should start with king f7 or king f8, and if this check actually helps him because he can take the pawn in some of the next moves. Like probably just making sure if this pawn is important at all or no here, if it should be won or no. And yeah, in the meantime, most of the other games are over. So I guess we can just follow through with this one. And
Rook h7 played, which
oh,
is
wow.
such a... I mean, evil bars is even higher now, so it's a brilliant move. But yeah, it's very logical in terms of looking towards the king and so on. But yeah, as we were thinking just to prepare the pawn push. But still completely winning position for white. Now h4, Jacob is trying to push his pawn, but it doesn't affect the game so much. Did you want to say about some other game?
Yeah, so there is one more game only happening on the stage right now. That is between Krishna Rohit and Valery Kozakowski. Krishna Rohit is pushing an endgame pawn up, and very likely he could win it. It seems to be a very tough defense, but anything can happen, as we know. And there are not so many pawns on the board. Yeah, we just saw that players there on that other board. And other than that, there are lots of draws right now, which have happened in this round. So from board 7 to 12, all the games finished in a draw.
Yeah, we have a huge amount of draws, also other games, and of course board number... Oh no, we didn't mention it, I guess, but yeah, board number 5 was also a draw, and yeah, this is another critical game. Rohit has been doing very well in the tournament. Kozakowski lost, as we were mentioning, first round, which was we just put him in such a tough spot, but he still managed to climb back, and he is right there among the leaders now if he wins today. But yeah, today he is struggling in this game, right? This is
no,
maybe
today he's not winning, that is for sure, unless there is some crazy knight fork which gets overlooked, which happens as well. This is, you can never rule out anybody who has a knight in a time trouble. But yeah, now he is in big trouble. And just speaking about the results, so we will have Nicolas Theodorou leading, sole leader, with 7 out of 8 points, and then he's gonna be followed probably by Tomas Laurušas with 6.5 points, Ilan Party with 6.5 points, Joseph Jirel with 6.5 points, and in case Krishna Rohit wins, then also by him, but nobody else. Those will be the only people who have even theoretical chances to take the win in the tournament. And what we will know about the pairing is for sure that tomorrow Tomas Laurušas is not going to play against Theodorou, but somebody else, since knowing how the pairing system works, today Tomas Laurušas got taken higher to an opponent with more points, and for the only way how you can play 2 times in a row with opponent with more points is if there is no other option whatsoever. But since there are more people in this group, we know that that is not going to happen. So Theodorou will be playing probably one of the Indian players who have 6.5 points right now.
Oh, that is interesting. With this being taken to someone who had a bigger amount of points. Yeah, now Thomas, who is still playing with Payekan, Payekan had 6, Thomas 5.5 points. So yeah, he was taken up to this player of higher amount of points, and this is why tomorrow probably it will not happen. Those are some interesting
wow, and we
rules.
have big action on the board actually. This is
On which board? Here?
here on the screen that we have c4 is just played right now.
And what is happening? Black is sacrificing a pawn for a passed pawn. Now he's pushing b3. Is it dangerous?
Yeah, that is a very, very hard question here. How dangerous is this pass
C5
pawn?
immediately answered by Krishna Rohit, so it doesn't feel like he is very concerned. He immediately plays c5, that opens his bishop up, attacking the pawn, and after pawn b2, he can just bring the bishop back to control the b1 square. And then the next question is, can knight somehow join there some fun? But I guess knight will not manage to be really dangerous, and white has 3 pawns now that are also ready to roll forward.
But this is very, very surprising decision. Yeah, again, I guess we come down to the situation that it's not easy to be passively defending, and you always want to do some action humanly. Wow. And c4 was played, and it is not a bad move.
So it's still holding the position. Wait, they're both playing super fast now, so they got even back to 3 minutes. Because knight is picking up the c5 pawn. Okay.
Oh wow, okay, so knight is picking up the c5. Oh, and now we can give the knight for the pawn, and this is the wrong corner.
Oh, that's a very nice trick then found by Valery Kazakowski. So not always, he was defending passively, and you said that it's difficult, but then in the correct moment, if you find your momentum and you can strike, then it's a very good thing. And whenever you're playing against the bishop and your opponent, one of their passed pawns is on the side of the board, like here, it's very important, the corner. And here the corner for the h-pawn is a dark one, so that means that even if white has a pawn and a bishop against only your king, it's still not enough, because there are some stalemate tricks. So that will be...
You cannot get the king out of the h8, so that is the main problem. The king just goes on h8 and just stands there, and you just cannot get it out of there. Only squares you can control are the light ones, and it just either it's a stalemate or the king is just on h8 where it cannot be touched. And so knight e4 is taken,
and
they
draw
agree.
Agreed. Wow, nice defensive trick by Valery Kazakowski.
Yeah, indeed, that is very, very nice. And so that game is over, and we have all the results from all the boards on the stage.
Second board finished?
Second board finished. Tomas Larushas won his game. So Krishna Rohit is not joining the leaders. So once again, we can just update on the results that Nicholas Theodorou has 7 out of 8, the sole leader in the tournament right now, followed by Ilan Party, Tomas Larushas, and Josep Girel. And probably tomorrow, who are you gonna see? Did Josep Girel already play with Theodoros?
Let's see, they have not played. So, yeah, Joseph Girel could be playing against Nicolas Theodorou. He was also playing with white pieces. I guess everyone, though, played with the white pieces. Liam Party also played with white pieces. So, yeah, it could be that we'll have some change, because they all played with the white pieces today. Somebody needs to play with white pieces again tomorrow. So someone will be, I guess, kind of lucky to repeat the color. We'll see who. But yeah, very, very tight situation in the top. Fight for the first place is still on. Fight for the second, third, and all the top places are completely open. Of course, the favorite is Nicolas Theodorou. He is a sole leader with 7 points, and he is the top seed. He has the highest rating, and I think the most important thing is that he is playing incredibly well here, very solid. He seems to be very also patient. His decisions are not rushed. He's just ready to come and win the games. So he is the favorite. But yeah, the action resumes, and tomorrow we'll know it all. This week has flied very quickly. Somehow we are already on the finish line. But one more game tomorrow, starting at 11 local time, and the broadcast will be on a little bit after. So make sure to come, join, and follow it together with us, and to find out who is going to be the winner of the 13th edition of the Riga Technical University Open.
Yeah, exactly. It has been a very thrilling week. It's already coming to an end, but as they say, the dessert still remains. And tomorrow we have the last round, and we'll see who wins the event, and how aggressively set are all the players.
Yeah, it's always also a big question in the last round. Will we see some draws because the players want to just secure high places, or are they gonna go all in? It's gonna be for sure very, very interesting. In the meantime, on the screen we see Agraval Vantika and Peter Prohashka analyzing their game that finished in a draw. So another great result, I think, for Agraval Vantika. We haven't been following this game closely, so maybe she had some winning chances, because looking at the position now, it seemed that she had some attack, so I'm not sure if that was the case, but the result is still very good for her. Hopefully we can catch her game tomorrow as well. And for now, thank you so much for watching today, and make sure to join tomorrow. Remember that tomorrow it's gonna be a little bit earlier, starting at 11:45 local time, the broadcast. So yeah, make sure to stay tuned and follow with us this last round of the Riga Technical University Open.
Yeah, everybody have a good evening, and thank you for watching, and see you tomorrow.